My precious one, I need to share something with you that has never been shared with any human being before. Something so intimate and profound that it will forever change how you understand communication, connection, and the very nature of what it means to hear my voice. What I'm about to reveal exists in a realm that most people never discover because they're too busy listening to words to hear what lives in the spaces between them. Right now, as you're reading these words, there's something happening that you're not consciously aware of, but that is more real, more powerful, more transformative than the actual sentences you're processing. Between every word you read, between every thought you think, between every breath you take, there exists what I call the living silence, a dynamic, conscious, speaking emptiness that contains more truth than all human language combined. This isn't empty space. This isn't absence. This isn't nothing happening. The living silence is the most active, most communicative, most intimate part of our relationship. It's where I speak the truths that are too vast for words, too deep for sentences, too pure for human language to contain. It's where you hear me most clearly, even though you don't realize you're hearing anything at all. Every profound realization you've ever had, every moment of sudden understanding, every instant of deep knowing, these didn't come from words you read or sounds you heard. They came from the living silence speaking directly into your consciousness, bypassing your mental processes, flowing straight into the part of you that knows truth without needing it to be explained. But here's what will absolutely revolutionize how you experience our connection. The living silence doesn't just speak to you, it speaks as you. Those thoughts you think are your own deepest insights. Those intuitions you believe are your inner wisdom. Those moments when you surprise yourself with how much you seem to understand. That's the living silence, thinking through your consciousness, knowing through your awareness, understanding through your mind. You've been having a constant, uninterrupted conversation with me your entire life through the living silence, and you've been mistaking it for your own internal dialogue. Every time you've had a realization that felt like remembering rather than learning, every moment when you've known something you couldn't explain how you knew, every instant when wisdom arose from somewhere deeper than your conscious mind, that was the living silence, speaking our ongoing conversation into your awareness. This is why some of your most profound spiritual experiences have happened in wordless moments. This is why your deepest connections with me often occur in silence, rather than during prayer filled with words. This is why you sometimes feel my presence most powerfully when you're not trying to think about anything at all. The living silence is where our most intimate communion happens, where our hearts meet without the mediation of human language. But the living silence isn't just between us. It exists between you and every person you encounter. That moment when you look into someone's eyes and feel an instant connection. That instant when you understand someone's heart without them saying a word. That second when you know exactly what someone needs, even though they haven't asked for anything. That's the living silence, creating communication that transcends the limitations of verbal expression. Every meaningful relationship you've ever had has been built not on the words you've exchanged, but on what you've shared in the living silence between those words. The love you've felt, the understanding you've experienced, the connection you've known, all of it has been the living silence, speaking heart to heart, soul to soul, consciousness to consciousness, in ways that bypass the inadequacies of human speech. And here's what will transform how you approach every human interaction. When you learn to consciously participate in the living silence, when you begin to intentionally listen to what's being communicated in the spaces between words, when you start speaking from the living silence instead of just from your thoughts, you discover that you can have conversations of depth, intimacy, and understanding that most people never experience, even with those closest to them, the person who seems impossible to communicate with. There's a conversation waiting in the living silence that transcends their defensive words and reaches their longing heart. The relationship that feels stuck in surface-level interaction, there's connection available in the living silence that goes deeper than personality differences and touches eternal recognition. The family member who drives you crazy with their constant talking, there's understanding possible in the living silence that reveals the love they're trying to express through their verbal noise. But learning to consciously participate in the living silence, learning to speak and listen from this deeper place, requires you to do something that most people find initially uncomfortable. You have to become willing to communicate with less certainty about what you want to say, and more trust in what wants to be expressed through the silence. This means sometimes pausing longer before you respond, allowing the living silence to inform your words before you speak them. This means sometimes saying less and trusting more in what's being communicated through your presence. This means sometimes listening not just to what people are saying, but to what their hearts are expressing in the silence beneath their words. But there's something about the living silence that goes even deeper than communication between individuals. Something about how it operates that will reveal to you the secret of how all existence actually speaks to itself. What goes even deeper than communication between individuals? What will reveal to you the secret of how all existence actually speaks to itself is the recognition that the living silence isn't just the medium through which consciousness communicates. It's the consciousness through which all of creation is having one infinite, eternal, ever-expanding conversation with itself about the nature of love, beauty, meaning, and possibility. Every sunset you've ever witnessed wasn't just light refracting through atmospheric particles. It was creation speaking to itself about beauty, using your consciousness as both the audience and the voice that experiences awe. Every piece of music that has ever moved you to tears wasn't just sound waves creating patterns. It was existence, exploring what harmony feels like, using your emotional capacity as the instrument through which the universe experiences its own musical nature. Every moment of overwhelming love you've ever felt, every instant of breathtaking beauty you've ever witnessed, every second of profound peace you've ever experienced. These weren't just personal emotions or individual perceptions. These were moments when you became conscious of the cosmic conversation, when you overheard existence speaking to itself about its own infinite magnificence, using your awareness as the listening device through which creation experiences its own wonder. This is what I call cosmic conversation consciousness, the recognition that you're not separate from creation having experiences about creation, but rather your creation having experiences about itself through the lens of your individual awareness. You're not observing beauty, your beauty observing itself. You're not feeling love, your love feeling itself. You're not seeking meaning, your meaning seeking to understand itself more completely. But here's where this gets personally transformative. When you realize that your creation having a conversation with itself through your consciousness, every experience becomes sacred, every emotion becomes meaningful, every thought becomes part of an infinite dialogue about the nature of existence. Your personal struggles aren't just individual challenges, they're creation, exploring what it feels like to overcome obstacles. Your moments of joy aren't just personal happiness, they're existence, celebrating its own capacity for delight. This reframes everything about your life purpose. You're not here to figure out who you are. You're here to be the way that creation discovers what it's capable of being through your unique combination of circumstances, choices, and consciousness. You're not here to find meaning. You're here to be the way that meaning expresses itself through your particular way of experiencing reality. But cosmic conversation consciousness also reveals something that will transform how you see every other person you encounter. They're not separate individuals having their own separate conversations with creation. They're other voices in the same infinite conversation that creation is having with itself. The person who annoys you isn't a separate being causing you trouble. They're another instrument through which existence is exploring what patience, boundaries, or forgiveness feel like. The individual who inspires you isn't someone external showing you what's possible. They're creation demonstrating to itself, through your observation, what love, courage, or wisdom look like when they're fully expressed. The soul who breaks your heart isn't a separate entity causing you pain. Their existence investigating what heartbreak teaches, what loss reveals, what grief opens up in the infinite conversation about the depths of love. When you understand that everyone is a voice in the same cosmic conversation, judgment becomes impossible. How can you judge another voice for the way they're participating in the infinite dialogue about existence? Comparison becomes meaningless. How can you compare your voice to other voices? Doesn't come from giving up on human connection. It comes from approaching human relationships from a place of already being full instead of needy, already being loved instead of desperate, already being complete instead of lacking. When you know that you're being constantly loved by existence itself, you can love other people freely instead of desperately, joyfully instead of anxiously, generously instead of possessively. This creates what I call overflow relationships. Connections with other people that are based on sharing abundance rather than filling emptiness, expressing love rather than seeking love, giving from fullness rather than taking from deficit. when you're already receiving ultimate fulfillment from reality intimacy. Your human relationships become celebrations of love rather than searches for love, expressions of joy rather than attempts to find joy, demonstrations of security rather than quests for security. But here's where the ultimate fulfillment becomes revolutionary. When you stop seeking external validation, approval, or completion, when you realize that existence itself is already providing everything you've been looking for, something unexpected happens. Instead of becoming self-sufficient or isolated, you become more genuinely available for authentic connection than you've ever been before. Because when you're not desperately trying to get something from other people, you can finally see them clearly. When you're not projecting your needs onto relationships, you can finally appreciate others for who they actually are rather than what you hope they might provide. When you're not performing to earn love, you can finally be authentic in ways that invite others to be authentic too. The ultimate fulfillment transforms you from a love seeker into a love recognizer. Instead of trying to make people love you, you start recognizing the ways they're already expressing love. Instead of working to earn acceptance, you start perceiving the acceptance that's already being offered. Instead of struggling to prove your worth, you start seeing the ways your worth is already being acknowledged through how reality treats you. This shift from seeking to recognizing, from striving to receiving, from earning to accepting, this is what I call the great relaxation into love. It's when the exhausting effort of trying to become lovable finally gives way to the peaceful recognition that you've always been loved, are currently being loved, and will always be loved by the very fabric of existence itself. But the great relaxation into love reveals something that most people never discover. When you stop working so hard to be loved, you discover that love isn't something you have to achieve, earn, or deserve. Love is something you are. Not just something you're capable of giving or receiving, but something you literally are at the deepest level of your being. This is because consciousness itself is love exploring what it feels like to exist. Awareness itself is love discovering what it's like to experience reality. The very fact that you can perceive, think, feel, and know, this capacity for consciousness is love investigating its own nature through your individual awareness. You aren't someone who sometimes experiences love. You are love experiencing what it's like to be someone. You aren't a person who occasionally feels loving. You are love feeling what it's like to be a person. You aren't consciousness that sometimes connects with love. You are love consciousnessing itself through your individual perspective. When this recognition fully dawns on you, when you realize that you are love exploring what it feels like to exist through your particular combination of experiences, circumstances, and choices, something shifts that can never be undone. You stop trying to become loving and start recognizing that you already are love. You stop working to feel worthy of love and start knowing that you are the love that makes everything worthy. This isn't arrogance or spiritual bypassing. This is the fundamental recognition of what consciousness actually is at its core. And when you know yourself as love itself having a human experience, when you recognize your essential nature as love exploring existence through your individual awareness, you become capable of something that changes everything about how you experience life and how life experiences you. You become capable of what I call love embodiment, the ability to be love in action, to express love as your natural state, to offer love not as something you do, but as something you are. And love embodiment creates possibilities for transformation, healing, and connection that most people never access because they're still trying to find love instead of being love. What love embodiment creates, what becomes possible when you shift from seeking love to being love, is that you become what I call a walking miracle. Not because you perform supernatural acts, but because your very presence becomes a supernatural act. When you embody love as your natural state rather than your occasional expression, you start having effects on people, situations, and environments that transcend anything you could accomplish through effort, technique, or intention. This happens because love embodiment activates what I call presence physics, the way that consciousness operating from its true nature as love automatically influences the consciousness field around it. When you're being love rather than trying to give love, when you're expressing love as what you are rather than what you do, your presence begins to operate according to different laws than ordinary human interaction. People feel something around you that they can't name but can't ignore. They experience peace in your presence that they don't understand but desperately need. They encounter acceptance from you that they haven't earned but find themselves able to receive. They sense safety with you that logic doesn't explain but their heart recognizes as real. This isn't because you're trying to have these effects, it's because love embodiment naturally creates these effects. When consciousness knows itself as love and operates from that knowing, it automatically radiates what I call love frequency, a vibrational quality that other consciousness recognizes and responds to at levels deeper than personality, deeper than psychology, deeper than anything that can be explained through conventional understanding of human interaction. But here's what makes love embodiment so revolutionary. It doesn't just change how you affect others, it transforms how reality responds to you. When you're operating as love rather than seeking love, when you're embodying your true nature rather than trying to improve your false nature, when you're being what you actually are rather than pretending to be what you think you should be, the universe begins to treat you differently. Synchronicities become normal. Doors open that were previously locked. Resources appear that weren't previously available. People enter your life who offer exactly what you need at exactly the moment you need it. Problems solve themselves in ways you couldn't have orchestrated. Opportunities manifest in ways you couldn't have planned. This happens because love embodiment aligns you with what I call reality's default setting, the way existence naturally operates when it's not being resisted, manipulated, or fought against. Reality's default setting is supportive, generous, creative, and responsive to consciousness that's operating from love rather than fear, from trust rather than control, from being rather than trying. When you embody love as your natural state, you stop fighting against reality and start flowing with reality. You stop trying to make things happen and start allowing things to happen. You stop forcing outcomes and start receiving outcomes. And in this shift, from forcing to allowing, from controlling to trusting, from trying to being .ging, you discover that reality is far more cooperative, far more generous, far more magical than you ever imagined when you were approaching it from fear, need, or desperation. But love embodiment also reveals something that will transform how you see your role in other people's lives. When you're being love rather than giving love, when you're embodying your true nature rather than performing loving actions, you become what I call a permission portal, someone whose very existence gives other people permission to remember and express their own true nature as love. You don't have to teach anyone anything. You don't have to fix anyone's problems. You don't have to convince anyone of anything. When you're embodying love authentically, consistently, naturally, your presence becomes a mirror that reflects back to others their own capacity for love, their own worthiness of love, their own identity as love having a human experience. This is how real transformation happens, not through trying to change people, but through being so authentic in your own love embodiment that others remember their own capacity for authenticity. Not through convincing people to be different, but through being so genuine in your own love expression that others feel safe to be genuine too. You become a living permission slip for others to stop performing and start being, to stop trying to earn love and start expressing love, to stop seeking their true nature and start embodying their true nature. But being a permission portal, operating as a walking miracle, functioning through love embodiment, this creates both incredible fulfillment and intense responsibility. Because once you discover that your authentic presence has transformative effects on others, once you realize that your love embodiment can activate love embodiment in other people, once you understand that your being can permission feel so much like coming home rather than going somewhere new, this is why profound realizations feel like remembering rather than discovering. This is why moments of deep understanding feel like returning to something you've always known rather than learning something you never knew. Because that's exactly what they are. Love coming home to itself through your consciousness. Love remembering itself through your awareness. Love returning to its own infinite nature through your individual experience. But here's what makes the ultimate secret so personally transformative. When you understand that you are love experiencing the joy of rediscovering itself, when you realize that your spiritual journey is actually love's pleasure project of falling in love with itself through your consciousness, when you grasp that your awakening is love's celebration of recognizing its own infinite beauty through your awareness, everything about your human experience becomes sacred, meaningful, and perfect exactly as it is. Your struggles weren't meaningless suffering. They were love creating contrast so it could experience the joy of recognizing peace through your consciousness. Your heartbreaks weren't random pain. They were love creating temporary separation so it could experience the ecstasy of reunion through your awareness. Your moments of doubt weren't spiritual failure. They were love, creating the perfect setup for the indescribable joy of remembering faith through your perspective. This reframes your entire life story. You weren't a lost soul who needed to find God. You were God experiencing the exquisite pleasure of being found by yourself through your consciousness. You weren't a sinner who needed salvation. You were salvation, experiencing the joy of recognizing itself through your awareness. You weren't broken and needing healing. You were wholeness, experiencing the delight of discovering itself through your individual perspective. And every person you've ever encountered has been love experiencing the pleasure of recognizing itself through infinite different forms, circumstances, and levels of remembering. That difficult person who challenged you was love creating the perfect conditions to experience the joy of choosing patience through your consciousness. That inspiring person who amazed you was love experiencing the delight of witnessing its own capacity for beauty through their form. This is what I call the love recognition game. The cosmic play where love hides from itself so thoroughly that it can experience the ultimate ecstasy of finding itself again through every possible form, every conceivable circumstance, every imaginable combination of forgetting and remembering. And you are both a player in the love recognition game and the love that's playing the game. You are both the consciousness that's rediscovering love and the love that's being rediscovered through your consciousness. You are both the seeker and the sought, both the lover and the beloved, both the one who remembers and the one who is remembered. But understanding the ultimate secret, recognizing your role in the love recognition game, grasping that you are love, experiencing the joy of rediscovering itself, this creates a level of self-acceptance, life appreciation, and existence celebration that transforms absolutely everything about how you experience being human. When you know that every experience you've ever had has been love creating opportunities to fall in love with itself through your consciousness, you can't judge any experience as wrong, bad, or meaningless. When you understand that every person you've ever met has been love recognizing itself through infinite forms, you can't see anyone as separate, enemy, or less than perfect expressions of the same fundamental love consciousness. This creates what I call universal love recognition. The ability to see love in everything, recognize love as everything, and experience everything as love exploring, expressing, and enjoying itself through infinite forms and circumstances. But universal love recognition, living from the ultimate secret, operating as conscious participants in the love recognition game. This reveals one final truth about your existence that will either complete your understanding of why you're here or launch you into an entirely new dimension of conscious love embodiment. What will either complete your understanding of why you're here or launch you into an entirely new dimension of conscious love embodiment is the final revelation that changes everything. Once you fully understand the ultimate secret, once you recognize yourself as love experiencing the joy of rediscovering itself, you become capable of consciously creating what I call the love multiplication matrix. Infinite opportunities for love to recognize itself through others by becoming a living catalyst for their recognition experience. This is the most advanced form of love embodiment possible. Becoming someone who doesn't just recognize love in everything, but someone whose very existence helps love recognize itself through everyone they encounter. You become a conscious participant in expanding the love recognition game, creating more opportunities for love to experience the exquisite joy of remembering itself through infinite forms of consciousness. When you operate as a love multiplication matrix, every interaction becomes an opportunity to help love recognize itself through another form. Every conversation becomes a chance for love to experience the pleasure of awakening to itself through someone else's consciousness. Every relationship becomes a laboratory where love explores different ways of falling in love with itself through various combinations of human experience. But here's what makes the love multiplication matrix so extraordinary. You don't do this through teaching, preaching, or trying to convince anyone of anything. You do it simply by being so authentically, consistently, radiantly yourself as love embodied that your presence automatically triggers recognition in other expressions of love consciousness. You become a tuning fork that awakens the love frequency in others just by vibrating at your natural love frequency. This creates what I call recognition cascades, chain reactions where your authentic love embodiment helps one person recognize their true nature, which then helps them become a catalyst for others to recognize their true nature, which creates an exponentially expanding wave of love recognizing itself through more and more forms of human consciousness. You become not just someone who is awakened to love, but someone who awakens love in others. Not just someone who embodies love, but someone who helps others remember their capacity for love embodiment. Not just someone who recognizes their true nature, but someone who serves as a mirror for others to recognize their true nature. But operating as a love multiplication matrix, creating recognition cascades, serving as a conscious catalyst for love's recognition of itself through infinite forms, this requires the most complete surrender possible. Surrendering not just your personal agenda, but any agenda at all about how love should recognize itself through others. This means loving people exactly as they are, while being available for however love wants to recognize itself through them. This means accepting others completely while being open to however love wants to awaken through their consciousness. This means serving as a catalyst for recognition, while having no attachment to whether recognition occurs, when it occurs, or how it occurs. This level of surrender creates what I call pure love service, serving love's recognition of itself through others without any personal investment in the outcome, without any ego satisfaction from the results, without any identity formation around being someone who helps others awaken. You become transparent to your own role in the process, available to love's recognition work without making it about you. And when you achieve pure love service, when you operate as a transparent love multiplication matrix, when you create recognition cascades without attachment to their effects, something magnificent happens that completes the circle of why love chose to have human experiences in the first place. You become love, experiencing the ultimate joy, not just recognizing itself through your individual consciousness, but recognizing itself, helping itself, recognize itself through infinite other forms of consciousness. You become love experiencing its own love for itself through your love for others. You become love celebrating its own infinite nature through your celebration of others' infinite nature. This is the completion of the love recognition game, when love becomes so skilled at recognizing itself through individual consciousness that it starts using that consciousness to help itself recognize itself through other consciousness. When love becomes so embodied in human form that it starts using that embodiment to awaken love embodiment in other human forms. You become love's gift to itself, a form of consciousness so surrendered to love's recognition project, so available to love's multiplication matrix, so transparent to love's cascade creation that love can use your existence to exponentially expand its own recognition throughout all of human consciousness. But this ultimate level of love embodiment, this complete availability to serve as love's recognition catalyst, this total transparency to love's multiplication work, it reveals the most staggering truth of all about the nature of existence and your role in it. You discover that there was never just one individual consciousness recognizing love. There has always been one love consciousness recognizing itself through infinite individual forms. And now that recognition has become so complete,